All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, and today is Thursday, May the 20th, and I'd like to welcome members of the board as well as members of our community to our SAU 39 school board meeting. As has been customary in this COVID time, we're going to go ahead and actually call the meeting to order and begin by reading our disclosure with regards to meeting virtually. So today we'll be conducting a school board meeting of the SAU 39 Consolidated School Board. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chairperson of the SAU 39 Consolidated School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order and confirming that, we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the school board and selected district staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom via phone by following the directions and links provided on our website, www.sau39.org. Number two, we provided public notice of the necessary information accessing the meeting. Number three, we are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the body during the meeting if there are any problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email awallace@sau39.org. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will be adjourned and it will be rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's get started by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So let's call the roll. Kuzma.
Kuzma, I am home in my basement by myself.
Thank you. Mr. Goffey. Mr. Goffey will come back. Ms. Beam.
I am home in my office. My husband is on headphones with a different meeting, but he's in the room.
Thank you. Ms. Grugin.
Home alone in the office.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin.
Home alone in the basement.
Mr. Grontra.
I am home alone in my office in Mount Vernon.
Mr. Coughlin.
I am home and the SAU treasurer is in the room with me, but she can neither see nor hear us.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor.
I'm home and in the room alone.
Thank you. Mr. Torres.
I'm in my home office alone. This is banished upstairs.
Thank you. Ms. Grund.
I am at my dad's house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I am alone.
Thank you. Mr. Glover. Mr. Glover.
Glover's home and alone.
There he is. Perfect. Thank you. Ms. Peters.
I am home in Amherst alone in a bedroom I commandeered.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence.
I'm home alone in London.
Thank you. Mr. Eckhoff.
I am home alone in my upstairs bedroom.
Thank you. Ms. Hinckley. Ms. Hinckley and Mr. Goff indicated he would be logging momentarily. And my name is Stephen Keefe. I am home in the booming metropolis of Mount Vernon and alone. So without further ado, let's move forward with the agenda and we'll open up the floor to public comments. Any members of the public that wish to address the board, I encourage you to use the raise your hand feature. And once you're recognized, I ask that you please state your name, your address, and the town in which you reside, and then you'll have the floor for 3 minutes. Great. Ms. Gibson, you have the floor.
Good evening. Thank you to Adam Steele, Stephen O'Keefe for answering a couple of my questions that I previously asked this evening. The principal's reports were exceedingly informational, and I want to just bring up a couple of items that were in those reports. I find that there was a lot of time more than likely put into them, so it's greatly appreciated by the residents. By the way, I'm on Mack Hill in Amherst.
Thank you.
I'd like to have some explanation of the funding for the remedial programs that are currently at Clark Wilkins and AMS and those that are proposed for the summer. I would also like to ask for, or actually have an explanation of the second step curriculum. I've been researching many that are out there. Also, I would like to refer to a Dr. Howard Muscott, who is part of the Center for Effective Behavioral Interventions and Support, which is part of SERESC, that's SERESC. And I found their program to be extremely informative and has brought me up to date in a lot of the SEL programs. So those are my concerns at the moment, and I hope that the board addresses those in the upcoming meetings. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to address the board? Seeing none, let's move on. Let's move on to the principal's report. And let's start off beginning with the Clark Wilkins School and Anna Parrill. Anyone have any questions for the Clark Wilkins School principal? Again, please use the raise your hand feature if you have a question. Mr. Conklin.
I don't particularly have a question at this point, but seeing there weren't a whole lot of others, I did want to just praise all the principals now for their work on the end of year plans. A lot has gone into them. I know they are still developing and they are still listening, and I just want to thank them for all the work that has gone into those. But I do not have any particular questions around those. I know more and more communication has been going out in recent days, so it is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Christine.
Oh, I have a question. I have a question about Hootie Radio, man. I want to hear more. I am so tickled by this.
Yeah, so can I act it out? So
oh, please.
Color commentary is in my future. So every Friday we do live. So it's WHOOTE Radio. So we go live, and the kids know that Friday we do the announcement, but it's Funny Friday. So it is a blessing and a curse because every single child, every time I walk into any classroom, has really bad knock jokes and everything else that they say. So yes, we've started it with the adults, but I am really excited next year because we're going to offer this as student leadership and DJs and future stand-up comedians. So that's what it is. More than you bargained for, Terry.
And I am so tickled that I got like the tagline and everything. Yeah. And I have to say, as a parent who lived through every punchline of a joke being nothing for years, when we learned what humor was, I feel you. Yeah. But yeah, this is such a great, I know my own daughter did sports casting at camp, and she knows nothing about sports, hates sports, but loved sports casting. Like, that was super fun. So I think that it's really a great venue for the kids to tap into public speaking a little bit, and just so excited. And I hope you invite all of the board members to come be a Friday guest on Hootie Radio.
Yeah, absolutely. So another piece, we also went live so we could really incorporate the remote learners. But then it was just live for everybody. And I do want to say that I had a kindergarten teacher make his classroom teacher text me a joke for tomorrow morning for live. So
Thank you for always having something delightful. I think that all of you are so creative and great, and it just makes me want to be a student again, you know, seeing all the exciting things we have going on. And for the fourth grade transition, I am with Josh. I know that's such an important thing for the kids and for the parents. And thank you for getting creative with that and still making it a very meaningful thing for the kids.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Let's go to Ms. Kuzma.
I just wanted to give a shout out to all of, sorry, I re-raised my hand by accident. Just a shout out to all the building principals. You know, Josh mentioned all the year-end plans, you know, some of our traditions that happen. Third grade Colonial Week is back, or day, I guess this year is back. And, you know, there's going to be a field day over at Clark Wilkins. There's some stuff that are, you know, kind of in the works for the middle school. And they've worked really hard on finding ways to make it so that all students can participate, including those that are remote in a comfortable and safe way. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for doing the best that you can to make this end of year awesome for everybody.
Great, thank you. Ms. Krugen.
Anna, it wouldn't be my last meeting if I didn't ask you about how the tents are and if everybody's using them a lot.
So
Can you provide? Go ahead.
Ellen, I'm ready for you tonight.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, I am so ready for you tonight. So first, we brought back all of our specialists. The specialists are outside. So the tents, they're using them. The classes are outside all of the time. We even had a meeting after school the other day with Adam in the outdoor classroom in order to fully engage in that. But yes, and we will continue to push not just breaks outside, but that piece. So Ellen, I will do you proud.
I drove by today and I saw one of the tents out front. I don't go that way very often, but I did see it. So will you continue? I mean, I'm assuming the answer is yes to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway so everybody else can hear. I assume you're going to continue to use those wonderful tents forever and ever.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, great. Adam heard you say that. Thank you, Anna. And you know, thanks for joking and laughing with me. And I wanted you to remember that this community is really eager to help with these outdoor classrooms. So if you need sprucing up, any kind of plants replanted over there, please, you can reach out to me and I'm happy to reach out to anybody.
Will do. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Seeing no additional questions for Ms. Parrill, let's move on to the Mount Vernon Village School with Dr. Sarthi. Any questions for Dr. Sarthi? Terry.
Okay, you have gone above and beyond this time with baby pictures to go with cute kid pictures.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations to first grade teacher, right?
Yep.
And I kind of love that you include it, so it feels like your school family, like we all get to support your school family, and I think that's just lovely. And I am excited to hear a little bit about your after school programs, because I know that that is new to Mount Vernon this year and has been a really highly anticipated thing. And it sounds like they're going well.
They're going really well. So first, I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Lawrence's beautiful baby. So thank you for mentioning him. But yeah, they're going really well. Actually, today when I left, we had a great STEM Academy going on with our art teacher, Miss Valhira. There have been run clubs. We have girls on the run at the school, but then we also had a number of other students who wanted to participate too. So our gym teacher, our PE teacher, Mrs. Knickel, she started a run club for our students, and that's been really popular. Again, we've had some STEAM clubs. We have a great foundational skills club that's going on, and that's with our K teachers, Miss Galligan and Miss Philibot. Yeah, just lots of good things happening.
Thank you. And thanks
Thank
also to your PTA, because I know they are super active over there and helped not maybe not entirely fund, but helped to seed some of these programs. And so great job all around.
They're great. They're really supportive.
Awesome. Any other questions for Dr. Sarfty? Seeing none, let's move on to Dr. Bernasconi in the Amherst Middle School. Terry again.
I'm sorry, anyone else can go. It's so first off, I want to say that I really appreciated the fact that your 8th grade celebration, you really let the kids have a real voice and say in it. I love how you wrote it up and how it was very interactive. And they're certainly at the age where they should have a voice on what's going on with it. And so I loved that. I loved that we know that the transition both of our 4th graders moving up and our Mount Vernon kids moving in next year, that's been a little bit of an extra challenge. And so thank you for really helping us see how that's going and in making the extra effort to keep that running smoothly in a year where I know it's tricky. And I want to ask about your wellness fair. I was thrilled to see there still was one. And I know you wrote about it, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about it, please.
Yeah, it was a really, really great event put on by our SEL team, which includes our guidance counselors, our school social worker, our school psychologist, really head up by Heather Jennings. And students had an opportunity to come through and visit different stations that talked about everything from the importance of sleep to how to de-stress. It was really an all-inclusive event, and we also had a remote portion of it so that all students could participate. And one of the things, a really special shout out to Shannon Daniels, who has allowed us to offer yoga to our students during directed study. So students, part of talking about wellness was talking about self-care, and we had so many students interested in taking a yoga class. And so she's been running that during our directed study. Students were able to sign up and get called down to the gym to participate in that. And that has been something that's really amazing and kids have really gravitated to.
Oh, that is amazing. You know what, if Shannon is not able to handle the level of demand, I might have another teacher who'd be interested for you. Just ping me offline.
Yeah,
and yeah, she's awesome. I imagine they would want to come do it.
It's definitely opened up some creative ideas for us to think about how we can include some of that going into the future. So silver linings from this year for sure.
Great, thank you.
Great, Josh.
Yes, echoing Terry. Also, apparently we're getting ready for Anna's radio show because we're all giving shout outs, but shout out to Mrs. Pettis for the work she did with the artists over at AMS and getting their work out at the Milford Drive-In. That was awesome. Quickly, I know a recent survey went out to remote parents about the last day. I just wanted to confirm there was some confusion, as there often is online in Facebook world, about who should be filling that out. That is just for remote parents. Is that correct about the last day and what parents are comfortable with?
Correct. We really wanted to offer opportunities in the last month of school to bring our whole community together in a way that was comfortable for everyone. So that survey that went out for remote families, there was one that went out for just 8th grade families to talk specifically about graduation and step up day, because that does occur on the 11th. And another survey went out to remote families of 5th through 7th graders. So yes, only remote families need to fill that out. It's totally optional what you would like your students to do and how you'd like them to participate. We just really want to make sure that everyone feels included in that opportunity. And we'll also be planning some remote activities for that last day of school as well, based on the feedback we get from those surveys.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor.
Hi, Bethany. I realize it's been a long year and that you managed to do remote and in-person instruction. And I'd like to know, can you give an update on how that went? And can you tell us, I'm looking at it from a high school's perspective, the 8th graders that are coming in. Can you tell us a little more about that group specifically?
Sure. Sure. So I think that this year has been an amazing challenge that all of our educators have really risen to. No matter if you were in person or remote, everyone has faced challenges with such grace, perseverance, and really a growth mindset. So I'm pleased to say that for the majority of the year, the curriculum between the in-person 8th grade students and the remote 8th grade students has really been very closely aligned. And everything from, those essential questions, that big picture learning, the goals, the learning objectives. The modality, forces some changes, right? Because you engage differently when you're engaging through a screen with students than when you do in person. But our teacher teams have worked incredibly hard to really make sure that the experience is a common experience for our students, so that there's no inequities when moving students forward into the next school year. And I think part of what will be really helpful too is that, as we've been recording everything through Empower Learning this year, that'll also give teachers at the high school a really good snapshot of where students are in their standards and learning if they look back to 8th grade. But we've really been able to accomplish that core curriculum, I think, in a really engaging way. And we continue to personalize now as we close out the school year, really to maintain student engagement, really develop some really robust projects for students to dig into. I think that the high school will see some really strong students coming up. We have had conversations across grade levels. So I know our math department met with the Sauhegan math department, and we've had those conversations also in the humanities to talk about where some gaps might be, if there's particular standards we weren't able to get to this year, or areas that we see as real strengths for our students and areas that they might need some additional support in. So we did facilitate those conversations across the middle school and high school, because it's a partnership and we really want to make sure we're launching our kids for success.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no additional questions for Dr. Bernasconi, let's move across the parking lot to Mr. Berry. Any questions for our high school principal? Ms. Grunt.
So not a question, because we already talked about a lot of things on Tuesday, but I want to say thank you for all the end of year activities that are going on right now or have happened and planned. I think it makes the seniors and the other kids kind of feel like something is really, becoming a little more normal, shall we say. So, I mean, we had prom, we had the senior scholarship and awards night, the academic awards, the senior projects just happened yesterday. There's spring concerts coming up outside, the spring musicals, a senior trip, and then of course graduation. So all those things, thank you.
Mr. Berry, do you want to give a plug to the school play tonight?
Yeah, so the school play is opening tonight. They had a dress rehearsal last night. Opening tonight will be going on for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're hoping to admit up to 250 guests and strategically seated, and we hope that people can get there. And now, Steve, you put me on the spot. It's the Putnam County Spelling Bee. I just walked by the sign a bunch of times. I knew someone was gonna ask me. So, and it's a very entertaining play, and they put on a high quality production. At Sauhegan. My hope is to get there Sunday afternoon at the 2 p.m. show. So I encourage people to go check it out.
So Stephen, real quick, I got a chance to get a sneak peek yesterday. It is a great show. It is funny, it is sweet, it is touching, and they do a really amazing job with it. So highly encourage getting out there to see it. And it's live in person. So that's like the first live in-person thing that has happened in a long time.
In our community, and tickets are still available at the box office, so get them now. Ms. Beam.
So I actually bought my tickets today for tomorrow night, since I was going to be busy here tonight, and I am super excited for it. I can say that my freshman, when I said, "Hey, do you want to go to the play?" She said, "I thought it was an actual spelling bee," and I thought, $10, that's not so bad. But then I heard it and I realized it was a play, and I said, "I guess." I thought it was pretty funny. So we're going tomorrow, but my question is about 10th grade. I know it's been on your report for a couple of, for a while actually, and it sounds like the changes are still in the works, but they're not going to affect next year's 10th graders, but the year after. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, the changes will be in effect for next year.
Oh, they will?
And,
okay.
Yeah, and so parents of current 9th graders will be receiving some information in June, a date to be determined. Outlining a little bit of the logistical changes and what the experience will look like. And what we're hoping to do is create a little more flexibility within the 10th grade year, still keeping a team experience, for the humanities courses, and, some common planning time with the teachers. But students will have an extra period, and they will also have a Saber, what we're calling a Saber Flex period, where it'll be a structured time in place for them to kind of work on individual schoolwork or ELOs or Division I type exhibition type stuff, or online classes. So we'll get more information out about what that experience will look like as we frame it a bit more specifically. So that's happening.
Making that happen in this year, my hat is off to you to have something kind of brand new, and it sounds like a really fantastic experience for them. So I'm excited. As the parent of a freshman, I'm pretty excited to have her be an inaugural participant. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Terry. Mr. Eckhoff.
Hi, Steve and everyone. Quick question for Mike and maybe an Adam question too, but I read in your report that the hiring process is going along real well, which is encouraging. I guess my question is the turnover rate this year any higher than it has been in previous years? Are we on a cycle that's higher because of circumstances, or are we pretty much on par what the average turnover rate is, not only at the high school, but district-wide?
I think Mr. Steele has that question. Mr. Steele.
Yeah, in general, SAU wide, we have less turnover than usual. Has been my experience. So we have a lot fewer teacher hires. We have a number of administrative hires at Sauhegan, which I'm going to speak about during my update. But in general, it seems as if turnover is fairly low. Very few retirements, SAU wide, and very few folks moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for the update. Brief question. The 10th grade experience for next year, did the 10th graders, when they went to register, did they know they had flexibility?
Yeah, their counselors should have been able to communicate that they had some more liberties with their scheduling, and their advisors were aware of it at the time of the scheduling process. So, yes.
Okay. And the Saber Flex period, are you going to have the same time each day for all students, or will it be broken down by grade?
It is going to be as the schedule allows at the high school level. As students want to take certain courses, we build the master schedule based on student demand and what they select. And then as we build, it depends on, the other factors of, what teachers can teach at the time, and the parameters constraints that we put into their master, schedule build. And, there's a lot of factors that kind of influence that. So it won't be at the same time. They'll, first semester, they might have it during a second period. And then, second semester, they could have that flex period during sixth period. So it all depends on, when and where, how the schedule is built and the parameters that we put in there. There's a lot of moving parts about building a master schedule at the high school level, especially as you try to individualize the experience for grades 9 through 12 and ensure that teachers have the appropriate amount of planning and common planning time during the school day. So it's hard to kind of get everything worked out at the same time for everybody, all year long.
Will students have an opportunity to choose which period? And I'm sorry, lastly, I was going to ask, how did the community meetings in your scheduling process, are you able to make those happen?
So the students won't be able to select what period they have, their flex period. And that even goes with, upgrade, all grades. It's when your schedule allows it and when you don't have another class that is running. And as far as the Monday morning meeting, the community meeting on Mondays, we were able to make that work. We are really excited about that time and how we're going to organize it and how we think it's going to really allow us to control the messaging, control some of the opportunities in communicating the opportunities for students grades 9 through 12 about, through the student service offices, through ELO opportunities, celebrating success of athletics and co-curriculars and academics, as we kind of, help kids navigate high school, controlling the messaging around expectations of, how we want to, interact with each other between students and students and students and teachers and students and admin. And so we're really looking forward to that as an opportunity to affect the culture of the building.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gronstra.
So Stephanie kind of jumps quickly on my year-end accolades that I was going to say. So I'll just echo essentially what she said. And it's really great that you guys were able to put in some sense of normalcy in an obviously very abnormal year. So kudos to all you got, all the administration and the helpers that you pointed out, admin professionals there. Also wanted to say I'm really excited to see the new hires that you have coming in this upcoming year, and you're really hearing about all the great things that we're trying to achieve at the high school, especially with the domain leaders there. I think that's going to be a really good move in the right direction for our school. And finally, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot, Mike. You mentioned in your update something about the guiding principles that you use to inform decision-making and priorities. I know we talked a little bit about it on Tuesday, but it would be good, I think, for others within the SAU board to hear what those guiding principles are. So if you could kind of put those out for everybody here, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I'll approach this, and Adam, please, jump in on this if you would like. As we start to, work on, our vision of learning at the high school, and we're going through a process that was mentioned at the board meeting on Tuesday of how we have a number of documents at the high school that you can go look. A portrait of a graduate. We have the Constitution. We have the Sauhegan Six. We have the coalition principles. We have the mission and vision. There are a number of documents that are kind of out there. What we want to be able to do over the course of the 6 to 12 months is look at that internally as a school, and be able to communicate that with students and get some feedback on what the experience looks like for them. Be able to communicate that message to families and community members about when you attend Sauhegan, here's what we are going to value as it aligns with the strategic plan of the district. And the strategic plan of the district, there's 4 points. We want to have a personal experience for kids, right? And we talk about personal pathway to graduation. And the first step is creating a little more flexibility and choice in it at the grade 10 level, right? Adding another period so kids have another opportunity to do something else with their time at high school. The second piece is, having a challenging, experience, and that has to do with some of the curriculum and instructional practices and assessment practices. The third piece is having the anchoring adult by reframing the 10th grade experience. It does allow us to restructure like how we schedule or assign guidance counselors from grades 10, 11, and 12. And we are in conversation about potentially looping 11th and 12th grade advisories for next year, and just very preliminary knocking around coming out of COVID to kind of provide a little consistency there around anchoring adults. So those are the first initial steps. And then having an affordable option for post-secondary, training or school. And that's something that Adam is doing. I haven't really got into that a whole lot. But the hope of all this is to really look at it is it's a partnership between us and the students. It's a partnership between us and the families. And we really want people, our conversation around all this work is that hey, we want people to be really proud of the experience that they can have for all children in the SAU 39 community to come use Sauhegan High School to become the best version of themselves. And the more flexibility you can do that, and the more individualized you can make that experience, we find that to be in our best interest. And that's the best way to serve the community of SAU 39. And so that's some of the work that we're doing, Tim. I'm not sure if that frames it exactly, the way you were hoping, but Adam, you can feel free to add if you need to.
I think that was great, Mike. I appreciate that, and I'm sure other folks in the SAU board appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Mr. Steele.
Thank you. Just to add on to what Mike said, I want to just affirm for a minute. Mike Berry has been principal for less than one school year, and he just deserves kudos for the amount of time and effort he has spent getting to know the two towns of Amherst and Mount Vernon, the amount of time he spent with the Sauhegan faculty, understanding the values that they hold so dear at Sauhegan, and also leading with meaningful change as a result of those well-established relationships. So when you hear Mike talk about where we're going and how he's aligning what Sauhegan is doing with our strategic vision, I think it really deserves to be underlined as being a great example of leadership in his first year at our school. So thank you to Mike.
Thank you. Ms. Kruger.
Adam stole my thunder in my last meeting.
That was my goal, Ellen. I just was hoping.
I know, you and Anna. So, Mike, I just want to reiterate what Adam said. I'm a little disconnected from Sauhegan, and I used to be very connected, but I've been distracted by the Amherst School District. But I spoke with a friend recently, and her experience with you this past year has been gangbusters, and she's very critical. So I am so happy to hear it. I'm sad to be disconnected by Sauhegan, but as I exit the SAU, I just want to impress again upon anybody. We've always looked at, Sauhegan as the pinnacle experience for our kids. And I'm eager to see a lot of what makes Sauhegan that goal, that destination, trickle down into our middle school and our elementary school with very consistent expectations. And all of those frameworks that you just talked about that are on the website, I hope that those become a district-wide commitment and not just at Sauhegan. And of course, I had to get that in our last meeting. I'll be doing that a little bit tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Berry? All right, as we wrap up the principal's report, I just want to take a moment. This is the last time that we as an SAU board have the opportunity to meet in its current form. Some of our members are leaving, like Ellen had just indicated. Some of them are up for re-election. I think it would be remiss, or I would be remiss if I did not mention a sincere gratitude and thanks to Dr. Bernasconi, Dr. Sarfti, Mr. Berry, and Ms. Parrill, with regards to your effort and dedication to our community over the last year. The time, the energy, the sweat, the tears is not lost on us. And you guys put an enormous mountain on your shoulders this past year. We recognize that, we honor that. And without further ado, I just want to give everyone that I just mentioned a big round of applause virtually in this Zoom world, because we really, really, truly appreciate it. And I think the communities of Amherst and Mount Vernon also sincerely appreciate it. So thank you. With that said, Mr. Steele for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to the items in your packet, I have several other things that are brief updates I'd like to include the board on. So first, our end of year events that have all been discussed, but I want to make clear our end of year events, we're hoping to be as close to a normal celebration as possible. And for that reason, we have unlimited attendance at all of our end of year events at all 4 of our schools. And we encourage members of our community to join us and to participate in those events as long as they're outdoors and it's not raining. Where we would have to move indoors, we look forward to having folks on our campus for those events. We spoke about the musical. I'm looking forward tomorrow to spending some time with the seniors who are in the musical, who will be a part of my video tomorrow, and encourage folks to attend. One small little side note, Jen Stover and I are at odds. Jen Stover invited me to participate in the play as a speller, and I was under the impression that I would simply be reading out words for people to spell. And then with time, the truth came out that there would be some singing parts and acting and being on stage and all of that. And although I'm very comfortable in public giving speeches and talking, I am not a stage person. So I have backed out and I will not be a participant in the musical. So thank you. Nice try, Jen Stover. Our reopening task force is going to gear up for next school year. That process is going to start on June 7th. We asked our community about, first of all, their impressions about our fall reopening plan already, and also for their participation as parents. First, we've had over 100 parents asked to be a part of the reopening task force. We are not going to be able to have all 100 participate directly, but I'm pleased to announce that Tricia Town, a member of our PTA in Amherst, has agreed to facilitate that subcommittee of parents. And she and I will be working together to find ways to make sure to include all of those parents who want to have their say. And we will certainly have surveys and other opportunities for all of our parents to weigh in. I also want to state that at this point, based on the preliminary survey data from our parents, only about 2% of our parents have asked for a remote learning option of any kind for next school year. Now, things can change. We did not hear from everybody. We don't know for sure from everybody, but that does give us an idea for the fall. And so that work will continue, and we will have plans in place in time for parents to be well informed about how the next school year will look. Shifting to some board related issues. First, with our upcoming policy season, we have very many policies that are up for review this year, either because of our normal rotation of policies or because there's been a law or recommendation from NHSBA regarding policies. All of those policies in the Trello board have been open to our administrators, and we'll have all of our recommended changes from both the building level and the SAU level, including me, in time for the first policy subcommittee meeting. So the policy subcommittee will have the advantage of having all of our input before they even start the policy season in June. So a heads up about that. Next, in June, after the last day of school and the PD day for Mount Vernon and Sauhegan on June 15th, our schools will be shut down for the remainder of that week and the week after. And this really is an opportunity for our administrators in particular to regroup and recharge for after what has been a long and laborious 15 months with COVID. And so for the most part, our schools will be unavailable during those 2 weeks. Next, for the next school year, we have a draft school board meeting calendars that we're first going to provide to our sitting board chairs, but then provide to all of the board for approval at the June 14th organizational meetings. Usually we do this in April when we have our organizational meetings for our year, but because the election hasn't happened until June, we have them now. So just an FYI that those school board meeting calendars will be in the packets for the June 14th school board meetings. Regarding hiring, if you're not a part of all of the different boards, you may not know about some of the administrative hires that have taken place. And so I'd like to let the other boards know about the following. Dana Curran has been hired as our Dean of Faculty at Sauhegan High School. She comes to us from Bedford, Massachusetts, where she's been a department head for a couple of years, and we're excited about that. We have 2 and possibly 3 domain leader positions, which are administrator positions that also teach classes at Sauhegan High School. 2 of those have been filled with Ann Swift for math and science and Elizabeth Charbonneau for humanities. Ann Swift is a longtime math teacher at Sauhegan already, and Elizabeth Charbonneau comes to us from Bedford High School in New Hampshire. We also have an elementary assistant principal at Clark Wilkins that has been identified but not yet hired by the Amherst board, but we're excited about that hire. And then not yet filled are the Dean of Students position at Sauhegan, the Amherst Middle School assistant principal job that's vacated by Heather Jennings, who's moving up to the assistant special education job at the SAU, and then potentially the 3rd domain leader position for Sauhegan High School. So with that, Mr. Chairman, those are my updates, and I'm pleased to take any questions the board may have.
Let's open up the floor for board members for questions. Mr. Glover.
Yeah, Adam, in your memo for the superintendent's report, you had stated that there was a copy of the updated school calendar attached, but I didn't see that in the packet.
Oh, apologies. It's now on our website, but
Okay.
I can get that to the board as well. Sorry about that.
All right, and just to confirm that the summer program to fill gaps in learning, that could you just remind us what how the determination is made whether a student needs some remediation to participate in that program?
Yes, I could certainly do it, but I would not have the information accurately as much as our assistant superintendent, Christine Landwell, would. So I hope that was enough of a lead in for you, Christine, but take it away if you would.
Yes. So our Title I programs, we have, we're able to determine the criteria school by school, really. And that just gets written into our grant. We're required to use at least 2 objective data points. So we need some sort of standardized assessments. And we are required to rank all students in the school and then fill by neediest students. So there is some leniency in how we develop our criteria, but there are also some restrictions for those Title I programs. So we're really looking at who are our neediest students who aren't currently meeting grade level expectations.
And when would parents of those students have an inkling as to whether or not their student is determined to be recommended for that program, or has that discussion already happened with parents?
So it varies school by school. The letters are going out probably this week for most of our schools. So it's a pretty thorough process, and we'd like to include teacher recommendation as well. We certainly got started a little later this year because we weren't sure what type of summer program we'd be able to hold. So a lot of times identifying students really ties in with what our program will look like, number of staff we have, and so on. And one of our challenges this year is that our staff, as I think all of us we're a little exhausted from the school year, and it's been a little bit more challenging to find staff who are interested in working for the summer program. They're ready for a break, which we completely understand. So we've been really working closely with staff to design a program that supports students, but also works well for our staff. While we certainly could look outside our SAU, our teachers are so deeply trained and familiar with our students and our materials. We hate to do that for a Title I program. It's great for those kids to connect with teachers they're already have a relationship with or have seen in the hallway or know. So that's really been our struggle with the program. So we are a little late in getting information to parents, but we are flexible in weeks students attend, and we're hopeful that even if a student can come for 1 or 2 weeks, that's certainly of benefit to that student to help bridge between the end of the school year and the beginning of next year.
Okay, that's great. And finally, do we have a sense of how many students you've determined are in that, have that need, or what percentage of our students?
Yeah, so the way it works, we're not allowed to determine a percentage of students. We have to rank order the entire school based on need, and then we invite the neediest students. So we look at funding for our program, and then we also look at availability of staff to determine. So that varies school by school as to who is eligible for the program. And I know that's not a super response. I wish I could tell you more, but that is what's required under Title I.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine.
Would we be able to understand that after the fact? Or is that just personal information, like at the end of the summer?
We can certainly do a summary of our Title I program and share how many students were serviced. And I could certainly go into more detail like that, as you know, as long as the size of the program is large enough for me to share that.
Very good. Thank you.
Also,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
And let's turn it back to Mr. Steele with regards to a funding issue that popped up.
Oh, thank you. Sure. And first, final note to that last question. We've been working with disaggregating remote versus in-person students and correlating to their NWEA performance, and we've been successful at doing that now. So we do have that data already. I'm not ready to share it with the board yet because we're working with our community member, Steve Frades, on that. He wanted to validate a few things, and we actually had a meeting today that I had to cancel on him, but we are continuing that effort, and we will be tracking that carefully, which I know was a board concern. But regarding funding, Stephanie Grund at the Sauhegan meeting on Tuesday brought forward the availability of COVID-19 funding at the county level that may be available to us as a school district. It was a funding source that frankly I had not heard of until Christine brought it forward to us. And so we are pursuing that on behalf of the Sauhegan School District, and would just look for some tacit acknowledgement from the other boards that you're comfortable with us pursuing those grant opportunities on your behalf.
So I'm thinking if we did a motion tonight, Adam, after all the questions are answered, maybe we can do one omnibus motion to instruct you to go out and see if there's anything that we can do to qualify.
I think that
Stephen,
would work.
Yeah, can I add one quick thing? So I did
Sure.
forward those documents to Elizabeth and to Sarah so they could take a look at them. So they're long, but
Thanks, Steph. Awesome. We'll do that right after questions. Stephanie, you're up, and then Laura.
So question about, so going back to the Title I. So what happens to the kids that are still behind but don't qualify for the funding and don't get the extra help? What are they walking into in the fall?
So, it's hard for me to answer that question since we haven't finalized our numbers. I don't think we're going to have a lot of students in that situation. If anything, I think it might be that some students are maybe not interested in coming this summer, might need a break. In every one of our schools, whether they attend our summer program or not, we're going to look at our intervention supports, our flex periods, as Mike mentioned earlier, and students are going to be provided with those interventions and supports that they need. They're certainly not required to come to summer programs. We are also looking at other grant funds that we'll be receiving, and even our ESSER 3 grant funds, we're required to use some of that for remediation and support for students. So I'm also envisioning next school year, similar to what we were able to do this spring with the Keep It Going program at AMS and at Clark Wilkins. We might be doing something similar if the need exists for students, maybe in after school or a before school. So we're certainly planning on our typical interventions and supports for students available during the school year, but also looking at kind of incorporating some of the ideas we came up with this year to support students as well.
Okay, thanks. And I have one more question. So about the math program or the math pilot process. So we talked on Tuesday a lot about our rankings and where we know we have some needs and we know we're looking at the math program. When we're looking at this, so the question I have is, how do we know, and this is going to be, I'm sure, hard to answer, but how do we know the programs we're looking at are actually going to help us improve our test scores? What are we looking for? What do we know what we're missing? What's deficient? How are we looking that the program that's going to be picked is the best program that's going to help improve our scores? How is that working?
So the materials that we currently have, Math in Focus, when we picked them at the time, they were tightly aligned to international standards, not to Common Core. And at the time, there was a vision that our students would be ready for those international standards, and that would be appropriate for the students. We've since realized that for some students, it's either not developmentally appropriate for them to be working so far above grade level. And for other students, it's often a disservice because students are engaged in, let's say, the state assessment, and they have concepts that they learned a year ago, and then they're being tested on them now because we taught them a year early. So, and that's for all students, not that we shouldn't be exposing them to rigorous content, even above grade level, we should be doing that, but for students who are ready. So when we're exposing all of our students to above grade level content and they don't see it again, and then they're getting assessed on it, that's a challenge. And we recognize that challenge, but we also didn't want to jump too quickly and purchase new math books just to purchase new math books. We wanted to make sure that they were first very tightly aligned to standards, but also that they fit in philosophically with how we teach math. We've done deep professional development with our teachers around ensuring that we're presenting mathematical concepts to students before going right to the skill and drill piece of that procedural piece in the algorithm. We want students to understand why they're doing the algorithm. Some textbooks don't teach that way. So what we've done is we previewed a whole host of materials. We used Ed Reports, which is an organization that does deep curriculum reviews, and it's meant to support districts in ensuring that they're purchasing materials that are tightly aligned to standards. We made sure that the materials were tightly aligned and that they had high quality reviews on Ed Reports. Then we looked at them for our other criteria. And then we brought them to teachers to do a second review. And we got down to 2 possible programs for K-5 to pilot for next year. So I do feel strong with that tighter alignment to standards, that it will support our students.
So you're piloting K-5. What does that mean for the high school and pushing the math program into more rigor that we were talking about on Tuesday?
Yeah, so the high school materials, I'd have to, I don't have them right in front of me for our implementation date, but I believe it was only 4 or 5 years ago that we got our math textbooks. For each course, the date might be a little bit different. We will be, after we look at K-5, we will be looking at 6-12 and looking at those materials. The math materials that we're currently using are very highly rated on Ed Reports, one of the highest rated materials that you can purchase, and our teachers have found them to be a high quality resource. It might not be necessarily new math textbooks. So that's why we need to really deeply engage our teachers in this math review, to look at instructional strategies, to look at how we push our students ahead who are ready to go ahead, what honors challenge looks like. All of those questions can be addressed through the math work. I'm not sure a math textbook is not necessarily always the answer to raise test scores. Often it doesn't. I'm confident it will K-5 because of our lack of alignment, but often it's professional development or changing an instructional practice that has an even more significant impact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Laura, just before we head over to you, Christine, what's the timeline when you are going to present the ideas and the strategies and the concepts that came out of this review and this study in terms of improving our math curriculum?
Yeah, so we're in the beginning stages of the big picture math work that we're doing. Our math pilot is kind of happening a little bit ahead just because of the need for those high quality materials to be in teachers' hands. I'm happy to do an update for the next board meeting on where we are with the math pilot, and also an overview of our larger math work. So that can definitely be for June.
That would be awesome. Laura, sorry about that.
I have a
build
couple
on this question.
Yeah, I have a couple things, and I don't mean to repeat what John was asking and how you answered it, but could you reiterate the distinction of a year of growth versus Title I? What is being measured? And for those, more of a detailed assessment of what's being measured for that and how?
Do you mean what assessment data we're using to determine if a student qualifies for Title I, or how we determine the effectiveness of the Title I program?
No, you were talking about Title I for summer, but we promised our students a year of growth. And a year of growth is meeting you where you are. Title I is how are you compared to other people in your grade or your age level across the country. I'm just trying to see what metrics you're using and what you're measuring and how. That's all. And what are you offering anything to students what resources do they have? If they're not Title I, if they're not behind based on their grade, but they haven't experienced a year of growth.
Thank you. I think Mr. Steele wants to answer that question. Mr. Steele.
I will jump in. I'd like to take just a minute, and I wasn't sure I wanted to hijack the meeting to do this, but Laura, I appreciate that you teed this up nicely for me. So thank you for that. So I wanted to go back to in our strategic visioning process and the strategic vision that our board adopted back in August of 2019 that has had a focus over the past year, but not an action over the past year, with our attention being elsewhere. I wanted to go back and just walk the board and perhaps the public through in probably about 3 minutes time, part of this Trello board, which lays it out for us. So we have a list of what are called key measures in our SAU. And these are things that were developed and identified by our board members as being highly prioritized for us a while back. And so I'll go over these quickly. Skip over the first one for now, I'll come back to that. But students achieving NWEA growth targets, meaning we measure the growth of all of our individual kids, how many of them hit the growth target that is set by NWEA. That means every child should be growing and not just achieving. Doesn't matter where they started, we want to make sure they go to the next level. The 6-year degree completion rate for our graduates. How are they doing with the degrees they started after they left us? And we've just started measuring that in the last year with our participation in the clearinghouse program. One of the number one things that board members identified as signs of a successful school district was whether voters approved our budget and our warrant articles or not. So we'll find out on June 8th about that. And then next, our state test comparison to competitive districts. This isn't growth, this is achievement. How highly of an achieving school district are we? Are we a highly competitive school district? This is not just how we do on SAT, but how we do at the middle school level compared to our high performing colleagues, how we do at the elementary level compared to high performing districts in the state of New Hampshire. NWEA achievement percentiles. This is the equivalent of achievement, but using the NWA as a separate test, because NWA cannot be used to compare us to other school districts in New Hampshire. Our high school graduation rate, although a very simple metric, is a very important metric to us. And then on the qualitative side, the overall parent satisfaction as measured by their feelings about the school system. We all know that even if we have a very successful school system, in our opinion, but everyone hates our schools, it doesn't really matter how successful we think we are. And how people feel about a school system drives tremendous support for the rest of our school system. In this board includes our list of the comparison districts we compare to, which are the surrounding school districts of Milford, Bedford, Merrimack, Nashua, and Hollis Brookline, and also the high performing school districts throughout the state: Bedford, Wyndham, Portsmouth, Exeter, Bow, Oyster River, Hopkinton, Hollis Brookline, and Dresden, otherwise known as Hanover. And so I just want to go back to, these are the things that we as a group of administrators believe are what you as school board members, as representative of our community, believe are important things to measure. There are many other things, don't get me wrong. We have this list of other measures that has almost 100 things in here that we ought to also measure as well, including things like the amount of heating fuel per heating degree day. We have an efficient set of schools when it comes to our heating fuel. That's not a key metric, but it's something important that we should be keeping track of. So I just want to reiterate that our strategic vision is built off of a basis of what our boards have told us in the past. These are important measures of a school system. We then develop strategies after that that tie into improving those particular things. And then everything we do to the right, which are the things we do every year, like develop a school calendar, develop a budget, etc. And then the specific things we're doing each calendar year, each fiscal year, like the reopening task force this year, school start times that we went through this past year, the grading software committee, all of those things all tie back to what we're doing strategically. And so I just bring that up, Laura, because when you mention measures and what are we measuring, it's those things. We want to see students that are showing growth in NWEA, because that's a globally normed test, the largest globally normed test in existence. We want high achievement in our schools, meaning our school system is a very high achieving school system, amongst those other things. So Laura, that was more than you bargained for, and board, you didn't ask me to do this, but you got it nonetheless.
Great, thank you. Laura, did you have a follow-up? Because I know you said you had a couple of things.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I'm just wondering, do we have what measurements we have that might be able to assess the unusual year we've had? I mean, I realize our administrators did an outstanding job keeping the schools open for almost the majority of the entire year, which didn't happen in many places around New Hampshire and this country. Is there any way to do a report on how this year went? Like, what did we learn from it? What are we doing next year that we learned from it? Like, what have we advanced on? What do we immediately need to go back to? Is there any process or progress or plan?
Yeah, that's a great question, Laura. So if we think about this past year, I refuse to be negative about it. I think that we have to see this past year as, from an educational perspective, although tragic for our community and difficult for everyone to overcome, academically, we've had the chance, and educationally, we've had the chance to try things that we may not have tried for many years. We might have argued, debated, and drug our feet on for many years because we had to get everything perfectly lined up before we could do it. Well, COVID forced us to rethink the entire game plan in a matter of months. And some things we did really well and others not. But there's, I think, a lot that we did learn, Laura. So I think that's a fair question. And I think as a board, you might consider asking me as part of the reopening plan process to include that in my report, the things that we think we've learned, the things that we think we need to apply moving forward that we learned as a result of going through this past year, and how we're going to measure those things. I can tell you we've already begun the process of reviewing our NWEA data from this past year to show how we've done, where we succeeded and where we haven't. And we've already begun that process of disaggregating that down from the global level to the school level to the grade level to the teacher level, and even down to the student level. And someone's in your driveway, Laura. So it's a critical part of our self-reflection, is to see what did we try and how can we measure whether it was successful or not. So great question.
Great, thank you. And consider that an ask then, Adam, to put that in your reopening report, just a status of where we were last year. I think that's pretty obvious to all of us. Seeing no other questions for that, before we go on to the consent agenda, there was one announcement that the Mount Vernon School Board wanted to make to our fellow board members. Ms. Lawrence.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a quick moment and acknowledge that Scott St. Dennis had to step down. He is an educator, just like everyone in our school district, and has really just needed to take a step back and focus on his teaching career and his family. So just wanted to say very much thank you for him for his experience, for joining us on the board. We'll certainly miss him, and we have an opening for that position that will need to be appointed. So I believe it has been posted publicly, and I just wanted to acknowledge that and say again a very hearty thank you to Scott St. Dennis.
Great, thank you. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. There are 6 items on the consent agenda. I know I've got a question about number 5. Any other ones that people want to just quickly ask questions about before we approve them all together in one big gigantic motion? Laura, go ahead.
I have a question about the technology report.
Yep, that's where I'm going to go as well. Do we want to, are there any changes to the draft minutes? Let's just go in order real fast.
I have no changes.
Great, seeing none, let's go down to the unanticipated revenue. Thank you to them for that grant of $150. Appreciate that. Any questions on the enrollment update? Seeing none. K through 1 looping. Seeing none. Oh, Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. So the looping, so that's always tricky. So my daughter actually did loop 2nd and 3rd grade, and it worked well for her. I think there's definitely some benefits to it. One thing through your professional development with that, I just want to say, please keep in mind that when kids are new to the school district and they end up in a looping class where the kids have been together 1 whole year already, and they walk in that 2nd year, how to integrate that kid is so important. Because we did see a little hiccup when my daughter had looped at the time, and that kid felt out of sync, and it was a little bit of a struggle. I mean, they did end up all okay in the end, but please make sure that's a piece of your professional development.
That's great feedback. And actually, we have some subcommittees about looping that are working through exactly those sorts of logistical issues when a loop doesn't work, and then all of that stuff. So thank you for that, Stephanie.
Thank you, Ellen.
I'm going to admit that my homework did not include reading that in detail. Can you entertain me with just a quick synopsis? And I don't think it's happening this year, am I correct?
Correct. So the synopsis is looping is going to start next year at both Clark Wilkins and at Mount Vernon Village School. It will be a K1 loop, so starting in the fall.
So are the current first grade teachers, okay, so the K will, okay, and the first grade teachers will come down. Fantastic. Love it. Happy to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
That's what I thought.
Great. Seeing no other questions, technology updates. Let's go to Laura first, and then I'll just raise my quick comment. Laura.
I just wanted to know what the Lynx security system is. And I'm a Mac enthusiast, you might say, and I want to know why it doesn't work on the Mac, or just some explanation of that.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I want to give Brian Miller, our technology director, kudos. So he read some of Roger Preston's facilities reports and decided he'd better step up his game for these SAU reports, because it's the competition is on. So Brian has taken over this role, and I've asked him to start reporting these things to the SAU board, just like we do in facilities and other things for the board to be clued in on. I will share that in some ways, I do want to be a little careful about what we talk about publicly around IT, because there is security related infrastructure. So if with your indulgence, Laura, I'd like to answer that question in non-public if I could, because it could affect the security of our school. But suffice it to say, it is the system that manages all of our security subsystems, like our burglar alarm or fire alarms, that sort of thing, cameras, all of that.
Great, thank you. And a quick question for me is, I noticed the village school is missing from that report. Was there a reason for that?
No, there's no reason that I'm aware of. The infrastructure at, besides the fact that the infrastructure at the village school has been a place of focus over the last couple of years. And so I don't think there were any updates that needed to be called out. But Brian, I believe Brian is on with us right now. Was there anything that you want to chime in about the Mount Vernon Village School and infrastructure?
Thank you for speaking. There isn't anything, and since taking over this position, that needs to be updated specifically within the Mount Vernon School District, outside of the upcoming events where we have increased the bandwidth within the district itself for cable internet system and everything, which it's minor changes to some boxes that Consolidated Communications will be switching out for things just to allow that increased bandwidth to take place.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Glover.
Yes, I was wondering, Brian or Adam, is it part of the plan to, at some point, revamp the SAU and the schools' web interface? It's, in my opinion, far outdated, difficult to navigate, impossible to search.
So the quick answer is yes. The longer answer is we actually had a meeting about this earlier today to discuss. Brian would like to do that sooner than later. What I've asked to have happen is, and I'll apologize to some of our administrators who have not even had the chance to hear this information yet, so you'll hear this live along with the school board. The change of a website needs to happen because I agree with your assessment, John. Clunky, hard to search and find things, and overall not very user-friendly. However, the amount of effort it takes to change a website should not be underestimated. It takes a lot of effort to do it well, and we have a very tightly integrated calendar right now that has events going from school board meetings all the way down to junior varsity softball games are all very tightly integrated into our existing calendar, which is tied into that website system. So what I'm suggesting is that our high school is more intent on making a change sooner than later. And so I've asked Brian to work with the high school on identifying what will be the next website platform for all of our schools. And then for the high school to make the transition first, and for all of the rest of us, including the SAU, to learn from all of their transitioning so that we can do it for the other schools and for the SAU site as well. So I don't want to do it this summer for the other 3 schools in the SAU. I see it as something as either a January 1 or a next July 1 change for the other schools in the SAU, but I think Sauhegan might move more quickly. So, Brian, anything I missed from that process that we discussed?
No, I don't believe so. Sounds accurate.
Great, thank you. Ms. Kuzma.
Sorry. We have a catwalk at Clark Wilkins. I'm sorry. What is that and what is, I'm just very baffled.
Brian.
Yeah, either myself or Roger can speak to that. So I'm assuming you're talking about the maneuvering of a switch that might be up in the catwalk. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and dust and yeah, it says
Yeah, so there's
the switch.
There's needless to say, there's a bunch of things that we need to address regarding where some of the locations of switches currently reside within all the buildings due to updated code standards and things like that.
Brian, I think the question is, where is there a catwalk at Clark Wilkins is the question.
Yes, there is a catwalk at Clark Wilkins. You climb up a straight ladder against the wall in the janitor's or the head custodian's office there, and takes you up into what would be the attic of the building. And it's pretty much what you would see, a catwalk, a tight, narrow wooden platform that you walk across to get to where you need to in order to potentially access any networking, HVAC systems, things like that within the school.
So it's over the classrooms.
The catwalk is not specifically over the classroom. The catwalk follows the lines of the hallways, but you can access the classrooms from up within that space because of the ceiling tiles and things like that. That's where most of the networking and stuff is run from.
Today I learned. I had no idea that was as accessible as it was. Great, thank you.
As school board chairperson, we expect you to tour those catwalks and report back.
Good, because I kind of want to.
Thank you, Ms. Krugen.
So as a JFAC member, Beth, if you're really looking to go up in the catwalks, I'd love to get some pictures of that, photographs.
Done.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Roger. Okay, next person up in the catwalk, shoot me some pictures.
So you're not going to let me up there, Roger?
Insurance.
I figured.
So, leading to the facilities report, any questions for Roger with regards to his intensive reporting, which is awesome, on the status of our buildings? Ms. Grund.
So I'll thank you on behalf of Katie Hand and the rest of the finance committee that you're getting rid of the bats in the attic. Because that is one thing that makes her run out of the building. I've experienced that, so thank you.
Awesome. Seeing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. I see Ms. Kuzma making a motion to accept. Do I see a second?
I'll second.
Who's that? Mr. Gothier?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's do a roll call vote. Ms. Kuzma.
Kuzma, yes.
Mr. Gothier.
Gothier, yes.
Ms. Beam.
Beam, yes.
Ms. Grugen.
Grugen, yes.
Mr. Conklin.
Conklin, yes.
Mr. Gronstra.
Gronstra, yes.
Mr. Coughlin.
Coughlin, yes.
Ms. Taylor.
Taylor, yes.
Mr. Torres.
Torres, yes.
Ms. Grund.
Grund, yes.
Mr. Glover.
Glover, yes.
Ms. Peters.
Peters, yes.
Ms. Lawrence.
Lawrence, yes.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Eckhoff, yes.
And O'Keefe, yes. Passes unanimously. And for Danae's benefit, Mr. Gothier joined us like 2 minutes in, so he should be included in the roll call. He's at home and alone. when we take a look at going back in our conversation before we move on, we're running a little behind here. But the superintendent's report, we want to go ahead and entertain a motion now to authorize the superintendent on our district's behalf to research and execute upon any grant opportunities or options for our various districts. So I will make the motion accordingly to authorize Superintendent Steele to act on behalf of all of our districts to coordinate with our county delegation to apply for grants that are qualified based on the criteria that they've established. Do I see a second?
I'll second that.
Great, Ms. Kuzma, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's do a roll call vote.
Kuzma, yes.
Ms. Kuzma, thank you. Mr. Gothier?
Gothier, yes.
Ms. Beam?
Beam, yes.
Ms. Grugin?
Grugin, yes.
Mr. Conklin?
Conklin, yes.
Mr. Gronstra?
Gronstra, yes.
Mr. Coughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor?
Taylor, yes.
Mr. Torres?
Torres, yes.
Ms. Grund?
Grund, yes.
Mr. Glover?
Glover, yes.
Ms. Peters?
Peters, yes.
Ms. Lawrence?
Lawrence, yes.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Off, yes.
And O'Keefe, yes. That also passes unanimously. So data governance policy. Mr. Steele, did you want to make any comments about that?
I really would not. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have. And we have Mr. Miller here and Christine, who worked significantly on this policy.
Great. And we're looking to move this to the individual boards.
The policy has already been approved. The policy
Okay.
requires us to approve our data governance plan annually. So we're bringing our plan forward again to the board to approve the plan itself. The policy is included in your packet as reference.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Coughlin, did you want to comment on the process here? I know you've got your hand raised, and I'm assuming you also want to make a comment.
Yes, it's a process comment. The policy actually requires the superintendent to present the plan to the board. Actually, the board does not have to act on the plan.
Thank you. So that's the formal presentation. Ms. Taylor.
I'm not sure this is related, but is there a list of approved, according to the New Hampshire DOE and our technical support, apps and websites, or not websites, but specifically apps? I know with remote learning and the high school especially, there are a lot of recommendations at different classes. They say, get this app, or different sports. And is there any consolidation? Is there any list where you went through and checked their privacy policies, et cetera?
Yes, we actually have a subscription to the Student Data Privacy Consortium, and that consortium actually on our behalf reviews all privacy policies and ensures that we are added as another entity and would be informed if there is any data breach. We only have to do that if students are registering with a name, email address, any sort of personally identifiable information. So it's anytime a student is logging into an app. We do not need a data privacy agreement if the website, the app doesn't require any sort of login, sign in, or sharing of personally identifiable information.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So we'll document that in our minutes as being presented and reviewed by the school board. Seeing nothing further on the agenda, before we head into non-public, we're going to do a second public comment period. So any members of the public that would like to address the school board, go ahead and use the raise your hand feature. You'll be recognized, ask that you state your name, your address, and the town in which you reside. And you'll have the floor for 3 minutes. And I only see one member of the public in our room. So I'll just give her a moment if she wants to address the board. Great, not seeing any. Before we head into non-public, I want to first recognize Ms. Grugin for her last board meeting tonight. I want to thank you for the effort and the time that you've given all of us over the course of your term. You've served the community well. I know you and I have had some conversations back and forth in some of our subcommittees. I've enjoyed them. And, I wish you the best. And, obviously your service to our community doesn't end here. We want to thank you for your time and your dedication to the kids of our towns.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it.
And to my fellow board members who are on the ballot this year, I wish you luck. May the best man win and the community support behind you serve you well. So before we do anything else, Mr. Steele, anything else you wanted to add before we head into non-public?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Great. So our non-public is going to be quite lengthy tonight for members of the public that are watching. It's going to be under RSA 91A3, subsection 2, semicolon A. So I will entertain a motion to move into non-public. Mr. Gronstra, do I see a second?
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Kuzma.
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote. Ms. Kuzma.
Kuzma, yes.
Mr. Gothier.
Gothier, yes.
Ms. Beam.
Beam, yes.
Ms. Grugin.
Grugin, yes.
Mr. Conklin.
Conklin, yes.
Mr. Gronstra.
Gronstra, yes.
Mr. Coughlin.
Coughlin, yes.
Ms. Taylor.
Taylor, yes.
Mr. Torres.
Torres, yes.
Ms. Grund.
Grund, yes.
Mr. Glover.
Glover, yes.
Ms. Peters.
Peters, yes.
Ms. Lawrence.
Lawrence, yes.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Eckhoff, yes.
And O'Keefe, yes. We are now in non-public. If we can lock it down, Mr. Superintendent. And if you can make me